It all started 15 years ago when I was 14 and saw a school trip advertised to Europe in my middle school. Mom said I could go, but first I'd have to pay for half of the trip. So I got my first job at McDonald's, saved up a couple $1,000s over a course of the year. At 15, I went to France, England, and Italy. It expanded my world as I was living in the lovely Fort St. John up north in Canada. I remember thinking there's so much more to this world than my world. I remember being so moved by the Notre Dame in Paris. I also think it was the first time I had a spiritual experience, in that I thought, wow, people must care so much about their God if they could build something as spectacular as the Notre Dame. The food I think I had in Italy was also a spiritual experience because it was so delicious. I met so many other young people from around Canada and around the US, and this sparked my passion for visiting new places and meeting new people. I promised to my 15-year-old self once I returned home that I would see as much of the world as I possibly could. And I went back to Europe another 4 times over the next 10 years, lived and traveled and studied abroad there. I've traveled to about 20 different countries, some European countries multiple times before I'm 30, so I feel pretty good about the promise I made to myself when I was 15. Once I graduated high school at the age of 18, I took a year off before entering university, and I worked 6 months at 3 different restaurant jobs, and I saved about $10,000 and traveled around the world for 6 months. My first stop was Japan. I felt so sorry for my mother at the gates of the airport in Vancouver. She was crying and she was so worried about me. And only now, when I'm closer to 30, can I comprehend how hard it must have been for her to watch her 18-year-old travel all around the world. I was terrified to land in Japan. It was probably the scariest thing I'd ever done. I didn't speak any Japanese, I couldn't read any Japanese, and even the words that were written in English characters, I couldn't understand. Japan was out of this world. It's hard to describe to anyone that hasn't been there, and at such a young age of 18, it felt like a different planet, almost like a cartoon planet. I'll never forget the kindness of the Japanese people when they helped me. When they helped me on the train when I couldn't figure out how to buy a train ticket. I had unfortunately had to take the train when I first landed at rush hour for the people that helped me then, and I got lost. I got lost trying to find my hostel, and I was wandering around the streets, and I actually went into like an apartment building, and somebody tried to help me there. There were so many things I loved about Japan, like the cherry blossoms, Harajuku, which is a cool district in Tokyo, the sushi, the karaoke, and the amazing trust within the culture of the Japanese people, something I didn't find in the West. After Japan, on the same trip, I flew to Australia, where I remember sunny beaches and perfecting my surfing. I also lived in Melbourne, Australia, and it reminded me so much of Vancouver. Melbourne and Vancouver, they seem very similar, like almost like sister cities. I had my 19th birthday in Melbourne. After Australia, on this trip, I went to Southeast Asia, where I visited Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. There are so many memories in each of these countries. I love Laos. It seemed to me what Thailand would have been many years ago before it got hit by so much tourism. The landscape in Laos is amazing, jungles and greenery like I'd never seen before. Vietnam was the first time I had visited a communist country. I found it interesting and sad to see the perspective of the Vietnam War through the perspective of the Vietnamese people. I also found it difficult at times to travel there because of such the different transportation system and the culture. It was so much different than I was used to in the West. Cambodia was the saddest place I've ever been to so far, in that I saw real poverty for the first time, and I learned about the horrible genocide and the effects that it had there. I saw many disturbing things in Cambodia, which I'm not going to go into at this time, but regardless of the sadness, It made me appreciate how lucky I was to grow up in Canada, and I went on to do a presentation to share the awareness about the genocide in Cambodia years later in university. There's so much more I could say about traveling around the world, and this is really just an introduction. After I got back from my trip at 19, I went to university, got a degree, did a summer semester in Czech Republic, and then another summer traveling around Portugal with my sister. Then I ended up living and working in the UK for 2 years while traveling around more European countries. I've traveled on and off for the past 15 years. I've met some amazing people. I don't want to think that my traveling days are over, but rather that I look forward to the next chapter of my life, my 30s, and I think I found the second love of my life to focus on. So stay tuned. Thank you. Bye.